Oop, there we go. Make sure you can see it. Well, a lot has changed in 3 weeks, hasn't it? This is the second installment of Tracking the Madness. It is February 9th, 2015. Chris Pearson here with you. As always, I know that it's been a while to get another projection up. I've been really busy of late, but I'm trying to get this one up. But if you follow my Twitter account at Fiercenator, I've kept you updated on getting this ready. I put this together last night after all the games from Sunday completed. A lot of big games on Saturday, and now we have a lot to get to in this video. New projection, complete bubble breakdown. Just a lot to get to in this video. Logo. I know it's nothing fancy, but it's kind of funny, and I guess I could have had a funny story behind this. It's just a bracket, and it has like different matchups of wording and like, you know, do I use guessing or tracking? Yeah, I put tracking through. Or predicting or following. Well, predicting is a bigger word, so just put it through. The insanity or basketball. Well, basketball's too basic, so you gotta put the insanity through. Joe Lunardi or the madness. Well, Joe Lunardi's overrated, so you gotta put the madness through. So then tracking or predicting. Well, then put tracking through, obviously, and then the insanity or the madness. Madness is a better word, so hence tracking the madness. So that's the explanation for the logo. So a lot to get to. Hard to believe that 3 weeks ago we were talking. I was full ranting on here between Georgetown and South Carolina, and now Georgetown is pretty much near close to a tournament lock, while South Carolina has fallen completely off the board. So a lot can change in 3 weeks, but we still have a lot to sift through, a lot of profiles to get through, and again, I'll do that when I do the bubble breakdown for you of all the bubble teams, where I sit with a lot of these teams. And again, I love chatting with you guys on a lot of these, so again, feel free to leave comments, questions, anything after I share my projection and my bubble breakdown. All right, but let's get right to it. Here is my latest projection. This was just put together last night after the games completed. So we'll start first with basically giving you the number 1 seeds. Of course, the obvious number 1 overall is Kentucky. Still perfect, 23-0. Just amazing how they've been able to do this season. You know, but then again, it's John Calipari. He finds a way to recruit young, good talent. So, you know, it's just amazing how they're putting it all together. I had Virginia as the second number 1, followed by Gonzaga, and then Duke hanging on to the 4th number 1 spot. So right now, here it is region by region. We'll start in the South. These games, the regional semis will be in Houston. Kentucky opening up against the current WAC leader, New Mexico State. The WAC was really a fluid league for a while, but now the Aggies are starting to kind of pull away from the pack. I think they're like 5-1 or 6-1 in conference play, 15-10 overall. Far ahead right now of any competition in the WAC, so they right now get that spot. 8-9 matchup, I think this one very intriguing as well. Texas out of the Big 12. Texas for a while for me was really in a precarious situation. They were actually at one point on my last 4 buys list as like a 10 seed, but they've slowly crept up of late. They got a big win last week, so they're now getting back up there. So I have them as an 8, taking on Xavier out of the Big East at 15-9. A couple teams in the Big East not exactly on safe footing right now. Xavier is a little bit safer than most, but not fully safe. You know, you're not like in Seton Hall or St. John's territory where you're kind of teetering on the cut line, but Xavier, I think, is safe enough right now, but that would be, I think, a really intriguing game if those two met. So Texas-Xavier is my 8-9 in the South. My 5-12, Oklahoma out of the Big 12, 16-7. It's looking more and more like the Big 12 is going to get at least 6 teams in the field, maybe even 7, because the fact that the Big 12 top to bottom is the strongest conference, at least RPI-wise, in the country. Just the numbers are so solid across the board. All these teams, like, you know, you got Kansas, Iowa State, Baylor, West Virginia, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and I can't think of this. Oh, Texas, but Kansas State's kind of in the mix. But to me, they're off the board right now. Even though they have some great wins, they also have some really bad losses. So they're kind of a very mixed profile that I'm really not too fond of. But Oklahoma definitely is in a very good position. I have them taking on Louisiana Tech, currently leading Conference USA. Although that Conference USA race is a very interesting race to watch. And I watched Louisiana Tech play UAB this week. And I tell you what, you want to talk about a team that's really improving and on the rise, you look no further than the Blazers at UAB, because they were really, at the start of the season, they were terrible. They were awful. And now all of a sudden they're rattling off wins in Conference USA. They're like 9-2 in the league. Very much in the race. You got La Tech in this race. You got Old Dominion in the race, Western Kentucky, and UAB right there in the hunt. So now UAB's RPI still is very, very low. It's still in like the 140s, so certainly not bubble discussion yet. But still, a team that if they can make a deep run in the conference tournament could be a very dark horse sleeper. So keep an eye on the Blazers. But La Tech right now leads the way out of that league, but certainly would not surprise me if they don't end up getting it for a team like a Western Kentucky or an Old Dominion or even a UAB. 4-13, I have Utah out of the Pac-12 at 18-4, taking on Iona out of the MAC 18-6. Iona pretty much has dominated the conference race in the MAAC for most of the season. Bottom half of the South, 6-11. I have Georgetown again. It's hard to believe that 3 weeks ago we were talking about Georgetown as a fringe bubble team, barely in the field, and then they started pulling off big win after big win, and now they're pretty much safely in the field, 15-8 out of the Big East. So just how far that they have come. Again, the Big East is also very strong top to bottom. You got Villanova, you got Butler, you got Providence, who's done very well. I think they have like 6 top 50 wins. You've got Georgetown, you've got and again, those teams are kind of teetering like the Xaviers and the Seton Hall and the St. John's. So the Big East is also a very strong league this year. I have them taking on the winner of one of the opening round games, and this is where my last 4 in take effect. I have Boise State. Now, Boise State, before last night, Boise State was not in my field. Boise State was certainly very, very close to the cut line, very close to the discussion, but then they knocked off San Diego State in impressive fashion at home last night. So I really consider that a very good quality victory for Boise State. They were a team kind of on the rise. Their RPI and strength of schedule numbers were going up, and they had a quality win already, beating Colorado State before that game last night. So now this was their second quality win on their resume. So I saw that as a great opportunity for them. They're now 6-4 in their last 10 games. They have 4 top 100 victories. Now they have 2 other games this week that they can't afford to lose in order to stay in this spot. They played 2 sub 200 RPI teams this week against Air Force. But by the way, Air Force just beat the snot out of Wyoming, who was leading the Mountain West. And now Wyoming's off the board, in my opinion. So they got to be wary of Air Force. And then they go to Fresno State. Air Force's RPI is 255. Fresno State's is 218. So Boise State can ill afford to lose either of those games in order to stay in this position in the field. But right now I do have them in the opening round game at 17-6, going up against a fellow 17-6 team in George Washington out of the Atlantic 10. And again, George Washington has also come a long way. When I watched them play Dayton earlier in the year, I'm watching this game, I'm thinking to myself, ugh. This does not look like an NCAA tournament team. They're slow, they're very methodical, not high scoring. The A-10 really isn't high scoring in general unless you look at like a VCU or at times a Davidson. But GW has played well of late. I think they're really benefiting from other teams losing, which also, if other teams lose and they fall, you go up. So that really helps their cause. But they do have 2 top 50 wins. They are 7-3 in the last 10, which helps. The only knock on them is their road record. They're not a very good team on the road. They're 3-6 in true road games, so that hurts them a little bit. So yeah, they've lost every game on the road. Every game GW's played, lost on the road. So they got to start winning some more road games. But for them this week, there are some opportunities. Now they can't afford a loss on Wednesday. They have to go to Duquesne. Duquesne's RPI is 258. Can't afford to lose that one. But then they play VCU on Saturday. That's a huge game for George Washington. And VCU now is a little bit docked because I don't know if you guys knew that they lost senior Breonte Weber with that devastating knee injury that he suffered. I think ACL, MCL, meniscus, everything. So just terrible news for the Rams. So that's a huge game for GW to really boost their resume at least a little bit. It might not be a big win since now Weber is out, but we'll see what happens there. But right now, I have Boise State and GW in the opening round game for the 11th seed in the South. 3-14 matchup, Notre Dame out of the ACC, 21-4 out of the ACC. You can't take too much of the grain of salt the fact that Notre Dame lost by 30 to Duke. I don't think you really can. Duke is always a very powerful team, so you really can't take too much in that. Notre Dame is still a fun and exciting team to watch. I have them taking on UC Davis, currently leading the Big West at 18-4. That's an interesting conference race as well. UC Davis is battling with UC Irvine and Long Beach State for first in the conference. So that's definitely, I think UC Davis is like a game or a half game ahead of each. So that's also an interesting conference race to watch as well. 7-10 matchup, Ohio State out of the Big Ten is my 7th seed, 18-6 overall. I have them taking on Texas A&M out of the SEC at 16-6. Now the teams on the 10 line, these are my teams that right now are the last 4 byes. So these teams are safe right now, but certainly they're kind of hovering right above that cut line. So they're not in last 4 in territory, but they're above that line. Texas A&M is another one of those teams kind of on the rise. Their profile isn't like flashy, but they do have a top 50 win. Their numbers are very strong. They have like an RPI in the 30s. Their strength of schedule is good, so that's why I have Texas A&M where they're at right now on the 10 line at 16-6. And then 2-15, Kansas out of the Big 12. Kansas always fun to watch, 19-4 on the season. I have them taking on the current Sun Belt leader, the ULM Warhawks, at 16-8. Then the Midwest region, top seed there is Duke, 20-3 out of the ACC. As I said, Duke always strong. I have them taking on a opening round game winner, either St. Francis of New York leading the Northeast at 16-9, or Bucknell leading the Patriot League at 13-12. St. Francis pretty much led the Northeast most of the way. They've been the dominant team in that league. Now the Patriot League race, though, it looks like it's going to come down to either Bucknell or Colgate. They've kind of switched back and forth over the past few weeks there. I watched Colgate a couple nights ago take on Holy Cross. They lost, so that enabled Bucknell to take first place from them in the league. So that could be a very fluid and ever-changing situation, as we always know with the projections. 8-9, this would be, I think, a fun one as well. The 8-9 games are always entertaining. I think this one would be fun. Cincinnati out of the American is my 8th seed, 17-6, taking on Colorado State out of the Mountain West at 20-4. Cincinnati, as you guys know, is really playing with a little bit of emotion and heavy hearts. You guys know that probably Mick Cronin, their coach, they found an aneurysm in his brain. He's away from the team right now. He's recovering. Get well soon, coach. Since he's playing hard for him, and hopefully they can use that as momentum going forward. And interesting to be on Colorado State. And I talked with and made comments to somebody on here about Colorado State, and he had it like in one of his a bubble team or like the last 4 in. It was Robert Vandermeer who's talked with me on the show before. Shout out. But Colorado State, he said it was like a bubble game against Boise State, and I'm like, really? I have Colorado State actually pretty much safely in the field now, not like full on safe, but safe enough that I think they're okay. Because they have, I think, 2 top 50 wins, so I thought their profile was actually really, really good, better than a lot of other teams, I think, in the same situation. Their numbers are really high, so I have Colorado State in a decent position. Again, the 9 line is right above my last 4 byes, so not like full-on safe, not exactly locked territory, but safer than I think a lot of people may have them. So, but I think that'd be an entertaining game between those two. 5-12. West Virginia out of the Big 12 at 18-5, taking on the current Horizon League leader Valparaiso, 22-4. The Horizon race is going to be very fun to watch as well, because you got Valpo, you got Green Bay, who has been up here in the past, and then you even got Cleveland State, whose RPI is like 125, and they're like 8-2, 9-2 in the conference, so they're hovering around here as well. So, and I've watched both Valpo and Green Bay play. I think these are 2 very contrasting styles. Valpo is a very up-tempo offense, high-scoring team. Green Bay is more, they want to slow you down. Green Bay is very good on the defensive side of the basketball. So it's very interesting to see if Valpo gets in. That could be a challenge for West Virginia. I think it'd be entertaining either way to see Valpo being here. I think there's going to be a lot of these conference champions that are going to be potentially some dark horses, teams like Valpo or Wofford out of the Southern Conference, or Iona, or even a Stephen F. Austin, which we saw pull an upset last year out of the Southland. So there's going to be some teams that, if they catch the right matchup, could really make for a surprise run, potentially in the tournament. And, you know, being the next Florida Gulf Coast, you know, that made the run as a 15 last year. So it could be intriguing. And speaking of Stephen F. Austin, I have them in this next matchup, and boy, this would be a dandy too. The 4-13. I mentioned catching the right matchup, but what if you catch a VCU without Briante Weber? I have VCU as a 4 here in the Midwest at 18-5, taking on Stephen F. Austin, 19-3 out of Southland. Stephen F. Austin running off another impressive winning streak right now. I don't know what it's up to now, maybe like 16, 17 straight, but they are just on a tear again through this conference. Again, they made it to the third round last year, pulled the overtime upset in the first round, and then, or second round I should say, and then lost the next round after. So again, if they catch the right matchup, maybe that could be a team that could make a very deep run through the tournament as well. And again, VCU without Weber, you know, in the first game they played without him against George Mason, they did win. They won like 74-60, but clearly you can tell that it's a bit of a different team without Briante Weber. So I'm sure the committee is going to take that into account when they see VCU. So they might not end up as a 4. The way their numbers are right now, that's probably where they would be, but maybe even more like maybe a 5 or a 6 range in the end, depending on how they play going forward without Briante Weber. As we know, the committee always takes injuries into account, so just keep that in mind. The 6-11 in the Midwest, either of this would be juicy as well. You got Northern Iowa leading the Missouri Valley Conference at 22-2. They beat Wichita State, which was impressive in and of itself. So right now the Panthers lead the Valley. I would have them taking on, again, one of the other opening round games here as in the 11s. I have Michigan State and Seton Hall in this. So now you know who my last 4 in are. They're Boise State, George Washington, Michigan State, and Seton Hall. Michigan State 14-8, of course, out of the Big Ten. Michigan State is a very tough team to figure out. The recent numbers here on Michigan State: RPI of 52, strength of schedule of 39. They do have 2 top 50 wins, but they're 2-6 against the top 50. They've had opportunities to get big wins, and they can't come through with them. They're 4-6 against the top 100. Now, the positives going for them, they are 6-4 in their last 10 games, and they have a decent road record to 3-2 in true road games. But very, very much a precarious team, very tough to figure out. This week for Michigan State, they do have some decent games. They can't afford a loss to Northwestern tomorrow night when they play Northwestern, but they have a great opportunity on Saturday when they host Ohio State. So that's a big game for Michigan State to win, so they can boost this resume. And Seton Hall this week has 2 big opportunities. Seton Hall has really been a head-scratcher this year. You realize this Seton Hall team got swept by DePaul? DePaul's RPI is like in the hundreds. For a while, they were briefly on my board because RPI went up, and then they lost to somebody else bad, and they fell off the map again. It's like DePaul is so squirrely. They're like Kansas State. But Seton Hall has 2 great opportunities this week to boost the profile. Their RPI is at 54. Their strength of schedule is 68. They do have 3 top 50 wins, which is good. It's better than most teams in this bubble position. But they're 4-6 in their last 10, not good. 3-5 on the road, not good. 3 bad losses on the profile, including the 2 to DePaul, not good. But you host Georgetown this week, so that's huge. And then you're at Providence. And those 2 teams are pretty much close to Big East locks right now. So if Seton Hall can win either one or both of those games, it puts the Pirates in a much, much better position than what they are right now. They could certainly rise a few spots on the seed line if they win either one or both of those games. So it would definitely benefit Seton Hall. If they lose one, it might not hurt them all that much. If they lose both, then that might drop them down to first 4 out status. So we really need to keep our eye on Seton Hall this week to see what happens with the Pirates. But for now, very precarious position for me, right on that line right now. But I have them playing Michigan State in an opening round game. Winner would play Northern Iowa. 3-14, Louisville out of the ACC. The Cards are always fun to watch with Montrell Harrell and company. 19-4. Out of the ACC. I have them taking on William and Mary, currently leading the Colonial at 15-8. Boy, the Colonial has been a wild race to watch, too. One week it's William and Mary, then it's Northeastern, then I think Hofstra led it for 1 week or something like that. And it's been a wild, wild race in the Colonial Athletic Association. But right now, The Tribe do lead it right now at 15-8. 7-10, San Diego State out of the Mountain West. I mentioned them losing to Boise State last night. They're now 18-6, but boy, do they play with defense. They really want to keep you under like 70 or 80, a very low number. I have them taking on Ole Miss, 16-7 out of the SEC. Another team really that's been on the rise out of the SEC is Ole Miss. They are on my last 4 buys now. But the numbers are great. 39 RPI, a 45 strength of schedule, so top 50 in both departments there. 3 top 50 wins. They are 7-3 over their last 10 games, so that's huge. 5-3 on the road. They've got 2 good opportunities this week to boost their profile as well. They go to Florida on Thursday night. And Florida's kind of hovering around, they're on watch, but they're not high on the list right now. And then they host Arkansas, and that would be a huge resume-boosting win for the Ole Miss Rebels if they can win that game on Saturday. So, big opportunities will be coming up for Ole Miss. And then the 2-15, Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. Whiskey always a tough out, 21-2 on the season with Frank Kaminsky and their supporting cast. And I have them taking on Coastal Carolina out of the Big South, 17-7 on the season. I watched Coastal Carolina a couple nights ago take on High Point, and that was basically for first place in the league. And actually, not only was it for first place in the league, but it created a 7-way log jam, literally atop the Big South. 7 teams, like at 7-4 or 8-4, tied for first place in the Big South. That is nuts. That's going to be the conference race that really we need to watch and see, because that could change on a daily basis. It could, okay, let me see if I can remember these 7 teams without looking. Coastal Carolina, High Point, Gardner-Webb, UNC Asheville, Winthrop. Oh, who are the other 2? Oh boy, here we go. Okay, hang on. Okay, High Point, Coastal Carolina's first because they beat High Point. Coastal Carolina, High Point, Gardner-Webb, UNC Asheville, Winthrop. It's the other 2 teams that have really, really bad records. Come on, Chris. Gosh, I know I can remember this. Oh, dang it. Coastal, High Point, Winthrop, Gardner-Webb, UNC Asheville. I'm going to have to look. I feel horrible. I'm going to have to look now. Golly. Oh, Radford. Okay, Radford was 1. I didn't look. I didn't pull it up. Okay, Radford was 1. Okay, now I got 6. Okay, Coastal Carolina, High Point, Gardner-Webb, UNC Asheville, Winthrop, Radford. I'm going to kick myself if I... Okay. Charleston Southern! Damn it! Sorry. Charleston Southern. Okay. I was on the tip of my tongue, and I had it. Charleston Southern. Okay. But I got the other 6. I got 6 out of 7. That's saying something. That's how much I follow this stuff. So it's Coastal Carolina, High Point, Radford, Gardner-Webb, Charleston Southern, Winthrop, and UNC Asheville. That's by record. So, Charleston Southern, I had it. Okay. All right. So there you go. So that's a 7-way logjam in the Big South. But right now, Coastal Carolina, with the fact they have the better record and better RPI than High Point, I have them in the field right now. Charleston Southern. They're gonna haunt my mind now. You didn't remember us. Yeah. Well. So many teams to follow. What more can I say? What are you gonna do? What can I say? Charleston Southern. What to say? All right, moving right along to the East region. 116. I have Virginia as my number 1. 21-1 out of the ACC. I have them taking on the Cinderella darlings of last season, Florida Gulf Coast, out of the A-Sun, 17-7. They are in a tough battle with North Florida for the Atlantic Sun Conference lead, but right now it does go to the Eagles. Brett Comer, still fun to watch. He's still on the team. It might not be the dunk city that we saw last year, but they still play with that same style, that same intensity that we've seen. So, again, who knows if they catch Virginia napping at the right time or whoever they play, if they do end up winning the A-Sun tournament and they get in. Would you want to play them after last year? I wouldn't. Even if Andy Enfeld's not there anymore as coach, they're still the same team. Comer's still a playmaker. He's still fun to watch. 8-9 matchup. I think this would be an interesting one as well. Oklahoma State out of the Big 12. Again, I said Oklahoma State's pretty much close to a lock. 16-7, beat Kansas last week. There was a huge win for Oklahoma State's profile. Have them taking on Dayton out of the A10. The Flyers, of course, made a deep run in the tournament last year, made it all the way, I believe, to the Elite Eight. 17-5, came very close to the Final Four. Either Sweet 16 or Elite Eight. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was Elite Eight. 17-5. That was a fun tournament run to watch last year for Dayton. Still a very good team out of the A10. The 5-12, this would be fun. This would be a fun game because these two teams have been entertaining to watch this year. Very much, fun styles of basketball, kind of contrasting, but they're both hard-nosed teams. How would you like to see Butler and Tulsa play each other? I mean, yes, please. Thank you, very happy, more please. Yes, I would. Butler out of the Big East at 18-6. Butler always entertaining to watch, always a hard-nosed team, gritty. They made 2 quarterfinal appearances in the past with great tournament runs. Taking on a Tulsa team that leading the American, although Tulsa did lose to SMU yesterday, they're still leading the American at 10-1. Frank Haith, the job that he has done at Tulsa, commended for an amazing job he has done there, getting this Tulsa team back on the map. 17-6, leading the American, huge. I think that would be a very entertaining game to watch. And one of those two teams potentially make a really deep run through the tournament if they get the ball rolling. And then the 4-13, Maryland, 19-5 out of the Big Ten, taking on Bowling Green out of the MAC at 15-6. The MAC race is also going to be a fun one to watch as well. Speaking of log jams, the MAC, you've got Bowling Green, you've got Akron in the hunt, you've got Kent State in the hunt, Toledo, Central Michigan. I think 5 teams are within a game of the conference lead right now. So again, that's going to be there's a lot of good teams in the MAC this year. So that's going to be potentially a lot. And I think I was watching a MAC game a couple nights ago. I think I was watching Kent State and Buffalo, and the announcer said on the broadcast, they said, don't be surprised if the MAC gets because it's a 2-bid league this year because there's a lot of good teams here. And I concur with that. I can see that sort of, but it's going to be very tough because the RPIs of those other teams in the league are very low. They're like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, 100s. And normally you don't see a whole lot of team /committee picks that are from that low of a pool of teams. So for at-large berth. So it would be nice to see the MAC get a second team, but I don't think it's going to happen unless it's maybe Buffalo, because Buffalo's RPI is like in the 40s. So Buffalo has the best case right now to be an at-large team because their RPI is so high. But for me right now, I think right now the MAC will probably end up being a 1-bid league. And speaking of Maryland, and I got to address this because this has been, and I don't know if you guys follow Big Ten basketball as much as I do because I live in Big Ten country, but Iowa played Maryland a couple nights ago, and again, the Iowa kid, Adam Woodbury, poked another guy in the eye, poked Melo Trimble in the eye. And this has apparently been the 3rd time that this has happened. Can the Big Ten personally do anything about this? I mean, seriously. I mean, once I can understand accident. Twice in the same game, okay, now something's going on. But when you do it a 3rd time, something's got to be going on there. Okay, something has to be, I don't know. Now in the Maryland game, he did get called for a flagrant foul. So at least now the Big Ten's taking a look at it and actually, seeing and keeping I hate to use this pun, keeping an eye out for it, and it's too easy. Watching for this kind of stuff. And then Fran McCaffery has to be all, egotistic at his press conference, and he's getting asked the questions about, Woodbury and the eye pokes and everything and the flaring because that's what the media does. They ask questions what's going on the floor. And he says, next question, that's not an intelligent question. Why is it not an intelligent question? Because I said so. Who do you think you are, Stone Cold Steve Austin? I mean, come on, Coach. This is a serious thing. You have a player on your team that is doing something stupid on the floor, trying to poke people's eyes out. That's stupid. That can cause not just an injury for a brief period of time. If you hit it in the right place, it could be for life. It could be for your life, for your career. You could literally blind somebody. For you to say that is not an intelligent question is just, that's a clown response. You know the clown question bro thing? That's a clown response, coach, because that's stupid. You need to own up for your players' stupidity, because it's just complete and utter nonsense to ignore that and say it's not an intelligent question. Yes, it is, because it's what's happening on the floor. It's what's happening in real life. What do you think it is, a dream? That your players just going ahead, boo, I'm going to poke you, oh, I can't stop you? Well, take this. Are you serious? Are you kidding me? Hashtag come on, man. I mean, seriously. Normally, I have a soft spot in my heart for Iowa because being a Big Ten fan, if they're playing, I'll root for the Big Ten. I'll root for Iowa. But if your basketball team is going to get away with that nonsense and you treat it as something I can shove under the rug and just pull away and just say, oh, no, I'm taking this with me. Bye, I got to go. Come on. Really? You know, are you going to put a secret folder together? This is, no one can see this. No one can see this. This is all my secret stuff. No one can see this. Oh, here's my Adam Woodbury eye poker. Yeah, I can't let you see that. I can't let you see it. No. I mean, really, man, come on. Do something about your player. I don't even think McCaffery suspended him for doing this crap. Are you gonna? Did you let players at Siena get away with stuff? You know, when you were there at Siena, Coach. Do you let players get away with stuff like this? Does off the court stuff mean more to you than on the court? Just my thought. I had to throw that in there. You guys know me. I get off on tangents, but golly, Dan Dockich, and I love Dan Dockich. Dan Dockich is my guy when I listen to radio sports radio sometimes. Dockich and Coward and Oldman. I love these guys because they don't BS anything. Dockich said it was like, I forget the word he used, like goonery or something like that. The word that Dockich used, I can't remember, but he hit it on the head. He was right. Dan Dockich is absolutely right. Because it is what it is. He sees what it is. He sees what it is and knows what it is and that it's stupid. And Fran McCaffery's like, not an intelligent question. Not my problem. Not my fault. We move on. Next game. Next question. We're on to the next game. Who's Fran McCaffery think he is here? Bill Belichick? Oh well, yeah, my player pokes blood in the eye. Yeah, but it's not our thing to discuss, or it's not my. I'm not going to discuss that. We're going to move on to the next game. If you got a question about the next game or whatever, you can ask me. But it's we're moving on to the next game. Why is that not an intelligent question, Coach? Because I said it wasn't. I say that it's not an intelligent question. I have discernment over all the questions that you media ask. I can decide what's a good question, what's not a good question. So I can determine that just the way you ask it. So I don't think it's a very good question, and we're moving on to the next thing. If you want to ask a question about the next team we're playing or the next game or whatever, or how we play today, that's fine. I'll answer those questions, but I'm not asking more questions about Adam Woodbury. That's what it is. That's how you come across, Fran McCaffery. You are coming across as Bill Belichick. That's my last word on that. All right, bottom half of the East. 6-11, Arkansas out of the SEC, 18-5 record. Taking on Old Dominion out of Conference USA. Again, I think Old Dominion, is certainly, in a safe position, but not fully safe. They do have 2 top 50 wins, but their numbers, the RPI is good. The SOS is what's going to hurt Old Dominion in the end. But I think for now they're in a good position, 18-4 record. They're in the Conference USA hunt. And certainly they're very much on that cut line. So I have them as an 11 seed. 3-14, I have North Carolina, the ACC, 18-6. And I want to mention here, of course, on here as well about North Carolina. Tar Heels are close to my heart. I love North Carolina. I've always been a fan of them. Thoughts and prayers with Dean Smith and his the family of Dean Smith and the school for his passing on Saturday night. It was a joy growing up. To watch Dean Smith's Tar Heel teams when he coached them, the success that he had there when I was younger. at that point it was the cusp of Smith's career when I was born, but it was still a joy to watch his teams play, and just a visual mastermind of the game. It just so much knowledge of his offenses and style and the way that he was and the way he carried himself. Tough loss for the basketball community, the North Carolina community, everybody there. Thoughts and prayers to the family and the whole North Carolina campus community for Dean Smith. He will be very, very much missed. I have them taking on Harvard out of the Ivy League at 15-5. The Ivy race is pretty much going to come down to Harvard and Yale. Those two teams are battling back and forth for that spot. Usually it's Harvard that takes it, but Yale is definitely fighting strong this year as well. 7-10. SMU out of the American, 19-5. SMU, I think, really last year got the shaft in terms of an at-large berth. I think they should have been in the tournament. I went on a whole rant about that, I think, at the end of last season after I watched the selection show, that SMU got shafted, but I think they're a much better team this year. As you saw, they just knocked off Tulsa a couple days ago, so that was a huge win for the Mustangs and Coach Larry Brown. So I have them as a 7. I have them taking on Iowa. They're one of my last 4 bye teams right now, 15-8 out of the Big Ten. We look at Iowa's resume, and Iowa's actually in a pretty decent position when you look at their numbers. RPI of 38, so very good there. The strength of schedule is what's really going to help Iowa. 13th toughest schedule they've played in the country, which is huge. So, but they have 4 top 50 wins, including a sweep of Ohio State, which as Ohio State continues to get better, that's going to be huge for Iowa's numbers. They're 6-8 against the top 100, not great, but decent. 6-4 in the last 10, and they're a very strong road team. Iowa's 4-2 in true road games. So they got the win over Maryland yesterday, so that was huge for the profile. Now on Thursday, they host Minnesota. So Minnesota just barely is in the top 100 at like 88 RPI, so it wouldn't be a damaging loss for them if they lost that game, but it certainly wouldn't help where they're at right now either. So that's a game that probably Iowa should win. But right now, Iowa have been very much in a better position, I think, than a lot of teams out there because of the fact that they have so many top 50 wins and a good record in the last 10 and on the road. So, and that Maryland win only help matters for them. So at least Iowa's winning games, even if their players aren't being disciplined very well. Hey, Fran McCaffery, take a lesson from Dean Smith. Villanova and NC Central I have in my 2:15 game there in the East. The Wildcats, the job that Jay Wright does, as I mentioned on here, is always amazing. 21-2, leading the Big East. Villanova, a very, very strong team again. And I have them taking on North Carolina Central out of the MEAC. The Eagles are once again dominating that conference on a big run right now. They are 18-6, and I think they're still perfect in conference play. Either that or they have 1 loss. So they are flying through that conference. Literally flying, eagle pun. Gosh, I'm so good at this stuff. There. All right, one more region. West region. Top seed, Gonzaga out of the West Coast, 24-1. Now, I watched Gonzaga a couple nights ago when they played Santa Clara, and I tell you what, I thought Gonzaga was going to lose that game. They were trailing at halftime, I think only by like a point or 2, and I thought, oh boy, the offense, Santa Clara's hitting shot after shot after shot, you can't do much against that. Gonzaga, they'll turn it around in the second half. They locked down on defense. They were a lot better. So it just shows how far Gonzaga has come. And a lot of people are saying that maybe this could be the year that Gonzaga makes a Final Four run. And I would not be surprised if that happened. They've come close in the past. Gonzaga was the first Cinderella story when they made the deep run. No one knew who Gonzaga was. They're like Gonzaga. We were all trying to know how their school name was pronounced. Gonzaga, we didn't even know how Gonzaga was pronounced, or if they went by the Zags or the Bulldogs. We didn't know. So we were all like, who is this school? And now they're a household name, and we know who they are. So, but they still got Mark Few as coach, and Kevin Pangos is a star, so they're coming along very, very strong. I have them taking on the winner of one of the other opening round games, Albany out of the America East at 16-7, or Texas Southern out of the SWAC at 11-12. Albany has pretty much run the table in the America East again this year. They're 10-0, perfect in the conference, just taking on all comers and knocking them down. Now Vermont, I think, is like a game and a half back. so they could be in the discussion again. But right now, it's all Albany all the time. I think they were a 16 seed last year too, if I recall. And then Texas Southern, if you guys don't know about the SWAC, there are two teams, and I might have mentioned this on the first video, that are ineligible because of low academic progress scores. So Alabama State, who I think is actually leading the conference, they're ineligible, and the Southern Jaguars are ineligible. So right now, Texas Southern would be the next team up that would be allowed to play in the postseason. And Texas Southern, of course, is coached by Mike Davis, who famously led IU to the title game in 2002. Where they lost to future Big Ten opponent Maryland. So, funny how that worked out. So, Texas Southern right now, 11-12. I think they're like 9-1 in SWAC play. I watched them play one game earlier this year, and the SWAC is very low scoring. It's very, slow play, methodical. So, kind of ugly games if you watch SWAC basketball. But hey, it's what I do. I do it for you guys. But I have those two playing in the opening round game to see who would face Gonzaga. 8-9, two decent powerhouses here. Georgia out of the SEC at 15-7, taking on Stanford out of the Pac-12, 16-7. Boy, Stanford last night had a whale of a time with USC. They were struggling a lot in that game. That game was pretty close in the early going, but then Stanford rallied to pull it out late. Both teams sitting in a pretty good position right now in terms of their respective conferences. So that could be an entertaining game to watch as well. 5-12, and this one again would also be two kind of mid-major schools that would be, I think, entertaining to watch. Wichita State, the Shockers, of course, out of the Missouri Valley, 21-3. They were undefeated last year in the tournament, #1 seed, but then they lost either, I think, in the third round or in the Sweet 16. 21-3 now in the Valley. They will take. I have them taking on Wofford, currently leading the Southern Conference at 20-5. And I mentioned Wofford is one of those potentially scary teams with the right matchup. But playing a team like Wichita State, that's a tall order. Because Wichita State, again, that play angry style, that very in your face, strong, kind of like a VCU, strong on the offensive and defensive ends of the basketball. So that would be a very entertaining game, I think. But I would probably pick the Shockers if I had to pick that game. Now, here would be a fun one, too, in the 4-13. Here would be, if you thought Wichita State and Wofford could be fun, how about Baylor taking on Murray State? I mean, oh my gosh, I watched Murray State play earlier this year, and I tell you what, that is an up-tempo, quick offense. They want to score on you in bunches. They want to get up the floor, shove it down your throat. They played Eastern Illinois this year, and at the time, Eastern Illinois was leading the Ohio Valley Conference, like undefeated record. And Murray State, I think, was undefeated, and they still are. And Murray State just took it to them all up and down the floor. Eastern Illinois was very methodical, slow, steady. Murray State pushed the tempo up, put it in their favor, and it's like the two didn't belong on the same court with each other. And I tweeted that out on Twitter. And it's like, my gosh, Murray State is just shoving it down their throat. And Baylor out of the Big 12 is kind of the same way. So two very offensive-minded teams. I would love to see that matchup play out against each other. And Murray State, again, with the right matchup, could be really, really dangerous come tourney time. 6-11 in the West, Providence out of the Big East, 17-7. I don't think there'll be any worry like what we had last year about Providence being on the bubble or not getting in the field. And because Providence, you remember, Providence had to win the Big East tourney just to get into the field. They were not guaranteed a spot, even in the tournament, had they not run the table in the Big East tourney. And then almost knocked off North Carolina in the first round. So, and I have them as a 6. I have them taking on LSU out of the SEC. 17-6, LSU. Again, a little bit of worry about LSU because they lost to Mississippi State last week, so that was kind of a really bad loss on the profile. So I think they're safe right now, but certainly not, the safest of safe. They're on that cut line, so just keep that in mind. We'll keep a close eye on the Tigers this week as well. 3-14, Iowa State out of the Big 12. Fred Hoiberg's bunch still strong. 17-5 out of the Big 12, taking on the current Big Sky leader in Sacramento State at 16-6, but they are battling with Eastern Washington for first in the Big Sky. And I tell you what, Eastern Washington, the better than Indiana plays, the better that win is looking on their profile. So they're certainly in the discussion now. Again, the strength of schedule is going to hurt Eastern Washington, but their RPI is in the 60s. At least they're a team that's on the watch discussion. They're on my bubble list, so when I share this with you guys, I'll share their numbers with you. But the fact they play in the Big Sky, that's going to hurt their strength of schedule. So they probably won't get in. They probably have to win the conference tournament, but certainly a team that can at least be on the watch. Speaking of Indiana, I have them as a 7th seed here in the West, taking on Temple. Indiana 17-7 out of the Big Ten. Temple has the same record, 17-7 out of the American. I do have Temple on that last 4 buys list. The big thing that's really why I like Temple right now, a lot of people I think have Temple out of the field. I think really the fact that they beat Kansas as bad as they did by like 20-plus points, to me that for me is a lot of weight. So that's why I like Temple. I like their numbers. I like the fact that they're 7-3 in the last 10 games. They're 6-3 in true road games. That's huge for me. So I think the fact that Temple can win on the road, I think is a big reason why I have them in the field right now. And a lot of people just are looking more at they're only 1-5 against the top 50, or they're only they're 5-6 against the top 100. Well, you got to look, I think you got to put, a hodgepodge, or what's the word, like amalgam or something like that, of everything together. Amalogous, something like that, of everything together. So that's why I like Temple. And then the 2-15, Arizona, 20-3 out of the Pac-12. The Cats always strong. I have them taking on North Dakota State, currently leading the Summit League with a record of 19-7. They are in a tight conference race with their fellow team down south, the Jackrabbits of South Dakota State. So it's kind of been those two battling back and forth for the Summit League lead. So that's the bracket. So here again, just real quick, just the bubble situation, and then we'll break down all their profiles and see what they have coming this week. My last 4 buys are Texas A&M, Temple, Ole Miss, and Iowa. Last 4 in: Boise State, George Washington, Michigan State, and Seton Hall. First 4 out: St. John's, Illinois, Miami, and UCLA. Next 4 out: Oregon, NC State, BYU, and Oregon State in my next 4 out. So if you look at the last 4 bye teams, again I mentioned Texas A&M, Temple, Ole Miss, Iowa. Texas A&M, what I like about the Aggies, again, the RPI is strong at 33. Their SOS is a little low at 77. They do only have 1 top 50 win, but they're 7-3 over the last 10 games. Good record on the road. They have 2 good opportunities this week when they host Georgia and Florida. So 2 really potentially good wins this week for Texas A&M are out there. Temple this week has Cincinnati at home tomorrow night. That's a big game for the Owls' resume to get a win over a solid tourney team right now. And then they can't avoid a slip-up on Saturday when they host East Carolina. The Pirates' RPI is 244, so they can't afford a loss to East Carolina. Ole Miss this week, I mentioned, had 2 good opportunities when they're at Florida and Arkansas, so great opportunities for the Rebels to stay where they're at this week. And then Iowa got the win over Maryland, can't afford to slip up at Minnesota. Well, maybe, it depends. If they lose a close game to Minnesota, they might not fall too far. If they get blown the doors off, then maybe we take a closer look at Iowa. But like I said, Iowa, of that group of 4, I would say Iowa is in the best position because, again, 4 top 50 wins, 6 top 100 wins, a great road record, and a winning record in the last 10 games. All big factors in my book. So Iowa, I think, is in a very good position. And I think really that Minnesota outcome might not affect where they're at right now. For the last 4 teams in, Boise State, their numbers now are really up there. Before the San Diego State game, Boise State's RPI was 55. Now it's up to 40. So that was a big resume-building win for the Broncos. So again, 2-2 against the top 50, 4-4 against the top 100. They do have a winning record on the road, but again, I mentioned those 2 games that they can't afford really to lose this week against Air Force and Fresno State. For George, I mentioned George Washington's schedule this week as well. Can't lose to Duquesne, potentially a big win against VCU. For Michigan State, the Spartans, again, the profile not really rosy. Again, only 2-6 against the top 50, 4-6 against the top 100. Can't afford the loss to Northwestern tomorrow night, but if they beat Ohio State on Saturday, that's a huge resume-building win for Sparty. And again, Seton Hall, 2 big games this week for the Hall. We'll really find out where they sit after this week, playing Georgetown and Providence. So really, really got to watch the Pirates close this week. Okay, first 4 teams out. What do they have to do to get in? Obviously, they need some help from the guys above them, obviously. It's always nice to have, but it'd also be nice if they, but here's the thing, with these 4 teams, they really don't have a whole opportunity this week to build on their profile. But you really look at the resumes, they're solid enough that if one above them were maybe to stumble a little bit, maybe one of these teams could leapfrog them in because of their resume. St. John's is sitting at 15-8. St. John's has really been for me wavering between in the field, out of the field, cut line, out, so they've really been kind of up and down. They are 2-5 against the top 50. They're 6-6 against the top 100, so that's decent. Problem is St. John's going the wrong direction. They're 4-6 over the last 10 games, and they're not a very good team on the road. The DePaul game is huge because, again, DePaul has beaten some really good teams, so St. John's cannot afford a loss to DePaul. They play on Wednesday. DePaul's RPI is still at 121, so that would still be a knock on the profile if they were to lose to DePaul. But the Xavier game on Saturday is huge. They're at Xavier, so that would be a huge game, again, for St. John's profile. So it'd be pretty much imperative for St. John's to win both those games this week. Illinois only has one game this week. The Illini are sitting at 16-8, a 48 RPI, 67 strength of schedule. They do have 2 top 50 wins, but they're 5-7 against the top 100. They're 2-5 in true road games. So that is very much a knock on the schedule. They play Michigan this week, and Michigan is really kind of fallen on hard times of late. Again, Michigan really, they're in the discussion, but they're really not because, again, those 2 losses earlier in the year to NJIT and Eastern Michigan, they're not going away. They're like 0-7 against the top 50, so they're really not a legitimate win. So Illinois really don't have much chance this week to really help its cause. Miami got a big win last night. Miami knocked off Clemson. That was kind of a bubble game between 2 teams that are really in that discussion. So Miami got a big win. Their RPI is now at 55, SOS at 41. 7-6 against the top 100. So anytime you have a winning record against the top 100, that helps your cause. They do have 2 top 50 wins, and they are 4-2 in road games. That's going to be huge coming up in 2 days on the 11th because they go to Wake Forest. They can't afford to lose that game because Wake Forest is 153 in the RPI. So that's going to be a huge step for Miami. And then UCLA. UCLA is 14-10, so record-wise not great, but the numbers are very strong for UCLA. A 46 RPI, 17th toughest strength of schedule, so that's huge for the Bruins. 3 top 50 wins. Now they are 4-8 against the top 100, so that really kind of hurts them a bit. And they're 2-6 in road games, but that won't really be. They won't get a chance to change that this week because they play 2 home games. They stay at home this week playing Oregon State and Oregon, 2 teams that I just mentioned are on my next 4 out list. So those could really be building block wins for UCLA. So you know those 2 teams are going to go hard at it because they're in the discussion. They know where they're at. So those are 2 big games for the Bruins this week. Rest of the teams that are in discussion, let's talk about the next 4 out. I mentioned Oregon. The Ducks are 17-7. They have a 57 RPI and a 63 strength of schedule. They do have 2 top 50 wins, and they're 7-6 against the top 100, 6-4 in the last 10. So good things for the Ducks. They will be a team on the uptake. They survived. They destroyed Washington State last night. They just destroyed the heck out of Washington State. So there was a big win at home. But 2 games on the road the rest of the week. They can't afford a loss at USC. The Trojans are 175 in the RPI. And then the big game on Saturday for Oregon at UCLA. So big game for both teams in that regard. NC State at 14-10, 61 in the RPI. They have played the 11th toughest schedule. So NC State has that going for them as well. But only 2-6 against the top 50. 4-6 in the last 10 games. 2-4 on the road. But they have 2 great opportunities this week. And this is a big week if you're a Wolfpack fan. You play Virginia at home. Of course, Virginia is the number 1 seed right now. And then you're at Louisville, who I have as a 3. So this is a big week for NC State. If they really want to build that profile and get 2 amazing top 50 wins, this is the week to do it if you're NC State. BYU have been really leery about, BYU's in a good position record-wise, 18-8, but the numbers are very low. A 66 RPI and 88 strength of schedule, but they do have 2 top 50 wins on the mark, 6-4 in the last 10 games, 6-3 on the road. This week, they really can't afford losing either one of these teams. They play St. Mary's, which is kind of a bubble game because St. Mary's is on the board as an RPI of 64. And then they play Pacific at home as well. So 2 games at home. They can't afford a loss to Pacific. The Tigers have an RPI of 236. And then Oregon State just now got back into this slot. Purdue was in this spot, but then Purdue lost to Minnesota, so now they're out of this spot. And in goes Oregon State, who beat Washington yesterday, and that knocked Washington off the board. So now Oregon State's back in this spot. The Beavers are at 16-7, a 68 RPI. The only knock on the Beavers is their strength of schedule is at 103, but they do have 2 top 50 wins, 7-3 in the last 10 games, so that's a huge stat. We wish they have a better road record at 2-5, but they have 2 opportunities this week to improve that. They go to UCLA, so again, that's a huge game on Wednesday. and then they go to at USC. Can't afford to lose that game. So 2 big opportunities this week for the Beavers. Other teams in the discussion, Massachusetts, good numbers for UMass, 47 RPI, 34 SOS, but 1 top 50 win, 5-6 against top 100. Can't afford to lose either of the games this week against St. Bonaventure and Duquesne. Green Bay, I mentioned them in the Horizon Hunt, 18-5. They have a 53 RPI, but a 161 strength of schedule, no top 50 wins. Rhode Island, a lot of people talking about Rhode Island and how they're coming up and they might get in. Not according to my numbers, not according to the numbers I'm seeing. 56 RPI, decent. 117 strength of schedule, yuck. 1 top 50 win, 1-4. The only thing really they have going for them is they're 8-2 in their last 10 games, and they're 5-2 on the road. So they did beat Richmond, which is kind of a bubble game, knocked the Spiders off the board. Can't afford a loss, though, to St. Joseph's or St. Louis. So if Rhode Island wants to stay in this discussion, don't lose either of those games. Pittsburgh, 16-8 are the Panthers, 62 RPI, 59 strength of schedule. But again, 1 top 50 win, 3-6 against the top 100. They're 1-5 in true road games. But they have 2 great opportunities this week for Pittsburgh. This is a huge week if you're a Panther fan as well. You play at Louisville on Wednesday, and then you host North Carolina on Saturday. So 2 big games for the Panthers this week. I mentioned Eastern Washington. Again, the numbers are a little high on them. 63 RPI, a 203 strength of schedule. So really it's going to take a miracle for them to get in as an at-large. St. Mary's is a real head-scratcher to me, too. The Gales are 18-5, 64 RPI, a 116 strength of schedule. 0-2 against the top 50. They don't play anybody. But again, when you're in the West Coast Conference, it's kind of tough to do that unless you play Gonzaga. 5-2 on the road. A decent challenge this week at BYU. It's a pretty big game this week to go to the Cougars on Wednesday or Thursday. But they can't afford a loss on Saturday at San Diego. The Gators are sitting at 12-11, but still a 67 RPI. They play the 10th toughest schedule in the country, but 1-7 against the top 50. That's not going to cut it. And 4-9 against the top 100, and 2-5 on the road. So the numbers is not going in Florida's favor. But again, 2 big games this week for the Gators. Big week if you're a Gator fan. You host Ole Miss on Thursday, RPI 38. You're at Texas A&M on Saturday, RPI 33. Those are 2 of my teams that are current 10 seeds on the last 4 bylines. So big games this week for the Gators. Alabama sitting at 14-9, an RPI of 69, strength of schedule of 38. 2-7 though against the top 50. That hurts Alabama's cause. They're 1-6 in road games. You can't afford a loss this week to either Mississippi State or Vanderbilt. I mentioned Purdue, 15-9, 71 RPI, a 52 strength of schedule is good. Now the good thing for Purdue is you have 3 top 50 wins, so that's a plus. And they're 8-5 against the top 100, so that's a really good position. I'd probably have them right below Oregon State as that 9th team out of the field right now. So, but only 1 real opportunity this week. You're at Rutgers on the 12th. That's Thursday. You can't afford to lose at Rutgers, so it would be wise for Purdue to win that game. Wyoming, 19-5. They were leading the Mountain West, so they lost that game to Air Force. 72 RPI. The problem, the 182 strength of schedule. They do have 3 top 50 wins, but 4-4 in road games. Big opportunity, though, on Wednesday when they are at San Diego State. So that's a big test there for Wyoming. You can't afford a loss to San Jose State on Saturday night. Davidson, the Wildcats, Bob McKillop's Wildcats are 15-6, a 74 RPI, but a 123 strength of schedule. 2-3 against the top 50. They really took a big hit when they lost. They lost like St. Bonaventure or something like that. So not a pretty loss there. You can't afford a loss this week to either George Mason or LaSalle. And then Clemson. Clemson is barely hanging on by a thread now on the board for the loss to Miami. 14-9, 75 RPI, a 53 strength of schedule. 2-3 against the top 50. Yes, they are 5-4 against the top 100, but 3-4 on the road. You do have a big opportunity coming up tomorrow night when you host Notre Dame, so that'd be a big win for Clemson to pull that off. But then you cannot afford to lose to Virginia Tech on Saturday. And teams that are just off the board include LaSalle, Long Beach State, Washington, Michigan, Georgia State, UTEP, Memphis, Tennessee, Minnesota, Toledo, and Richmond. Those teams are in the 78 to 90 RPI range that are just off the board. And we need a little bit of help and some wins to get back in the discussion. All right, guys, that is it for this week, for this edition of Tracking the Madness, our second edition. Thank you guys so much for following along and going through and hearing me about this, about the teams, and my rant on Iowa, and my Bill Belichick impression, and all that good stuff. It happens on the show. As always, if you want to share your last four in, last four buys, last four in, first four out, Robert, I'm sure you will. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in, but feel free to do so either below or on the channel. We'll probably do another one here in the next 2 weeks. As soon as I get a concrete date, I will post it on the discussion page on the channel, and I will let you guys know. Thank you, as always, for tuning in, and we will see you again in 2 more weeks. Things might be a little bit different again. We do it all again here on another edition of Tracking the Madness. Thanks, guys.